The 5 Rolex watches that appreciate faster than gold and stocks. Few people realize it, but true luxury never shouts. It whispers. While most chase after gold, trendy stocks, or promises of quick returns, there's a silent market where time works in favor of those with vision. It's curious to think that an object created to mark hours can, in practice, mark entire generations of wealth. And here lies the paradox. The less a Rolex seems like an investment, the greater the long-term gains tend to be. The truth is that most people lose money not because of a lack of capital, but because of a lack of understanding of the context. They buy when the desire has already become headline news, when the queue is already too long, and when the price has already reflected all the euphoria. Those who understand the game, however, learn to observe invisible signs. Silent discontinuation, initial rejection, limited production, forgotten stories. That's how some watches go from beautiful to veritable. Wrist safes, without warning. And perhaps the most provocative thing is this. These Rolex watches don't appreciate in value, despite they value time, because from him. Each passing year filters out the merely curious, and keeps only those who truly understand the value of what they hold. Throughout this content, it becomes clear that it's not about showing off, but about strategy, patience, and understanding human behavior. Because, in the end, those who learn to see value before others rarely depend on luck. Rolex Daytona, Paul Newman. The watch that became a legend and multiplied fortunes. The Rolex Daytona, Paul Newman. It didn't become a legend by chance. It became a legend because, for years, it was ignored. That's right. While many people chased after the obvious, this specific model lay dormant in shop windows, unsold, cheap, and undervalued. The detail? The so-called exotic dial, with contrasting numbers that nobody wanted. Until time, as always, did us the favor of revealing the obvious. Rarity plus history plus scarcity is the silent formula for appreciation. And then, my friend, the game changed completely. The turning point came when they discovered that Paul Newman, he wore that exact Daytona. Not because it was expensive, but because he liked it. From then on, the watch ceased to be just an object and began to carry a narrative, an invisible status, and an emotional desire. At auctions, pieces that cost a few thousand became worth millions. And this teaches something that many people ignore. The biggest leaps in value don't happen when everyone is watching, but when almost no one notices what is being built. Those who understand this game learn to think like collectors, not consumers. Instead of asking, how much does it cost? The right question is, how many are there? And who really wants this in 10 or 20 years? It's the same reasoning used by those who buy land before the city grows, or shares before the company makes headlines. The Daytona Paul Newman proves that patience, long-term vision, and understanding context overcome any haste. And this opens up space to understand why other models of Rolex. They followed similar paths, but in very different ways. Rolex Submariner Hulk, the green that became a symbol of vision and timing. When the Rolex Submariner Hulk, when it appeared, many people turned up their noses. Too green, too flashy, out of the ordinary, they said. Curious, isn't it? That's almost always how the market reacts to something new before understanding its potential. But those with vision noticed something different there. The rare combination of a classic case, intense green dial, and equally green bezel created its own identity. It wasn't just a submariner. It was the submarine that broke the rules without losing its elegance. And in the luxury world, that's often a silent sign of future appreciation. The big turning point came when the Rolex he decided to discontinue the model. That was it. What was once opinion became a real scarcity. Within months, prices began to rise faster than many traditional investments. And here's a practical lesson. Assets that appreciate rapidly almost always go through three phases: rejection, acceptance, and late desire. Those who buy amidst the noise pay dearly. Those who buy when few believe usually smile later. Hulk taught this in practice, without needing to say a word. This watch also reveals a common mistake made by those who want to invest in luxury: waiting too long for confirmation. Visionary people observe signs, not headlines. They analyze limited production, brand behavior, initial public reaction, and the history of similar models. It's like choosing stocks of solid companies before the boom or properties in neighborhoods before appreciation. And when you understand this pattern, it becomes impossible not to notice that there is another Rolex that follows exactly this logic, only with an even more classic and global aura. Rolex GMT Master 2. Pepsi, the global classic that transcends generations, adding value. The Rolex GMT Master 2. Pepsi. It's the kind of piece that never needed to shout to be noticed. Red and blue on the bezel, clean design and functionality, conceived for those who cross time zones. It was born as a tool, became an icon, and today is a highly desirable asset. The detail is that, because it's too classic, many underestimate its potential for appreciation. But the market tends to reward exactly that: continuity, instant recognition, and an aesthetic that ages well, like a fine wine. When Pepsi brought back the ceramic bezel, the line exploded. It wasn't a passing fad. It was a confirmation of legacy. Controlled production, global demand, and a preference for specific watch straps created micro-scarcity, the kind of bottleneck that pushes prices up without fanfare. In practice, those who understood the timing realized it wasn't about buying a pretty watch, but about acquiring a piece of history with real liquidity in the secondary market. There's a simple lesson here. Assets that span generations tend to perform better in the long run. Pepsi functions like the stock of century-old companies that innovate without breaking with their essence. To apply this, observe versions, references, production years, and less common combinations. It's in these details that appreciation is hidden. And, interestingly, this reasoning helps to understand why a seemingly simple Rolex caused one of the biggest price explosions in recent years, without warning. Rolex Oyster Perpetual, Tiffany Blue, a chance encounter that turned into a craze and wealth. Sometimes the market creates monsters, unintentionally. Rolex Oyster Perpetual. Tiffany Blue. It was born as a simple, almost discreet model, without complications, without a sporting pedigree. But the color, that mesmerizing turquoise blue, touched an invisible nerve of collective desire. It only took someone associating the shade with the brand's identity, Tiffany & Co. Even without an official partnership, the watch transcends the ordinary and evolves into a cultural object. And when culture is scarce, prices tend to skyrocket. The explosion happened too quickly for those who missed the boat. People who bought at retail saw the value double, triple, and even quadruple in a short time. This shows an interesting pattern. Not all appreciation stems from tradition. Some comes from market emotional timing. It's similar to contemporary art, NFTs at their peak, or even fashion brands that go viral out of nowhere. Those who understood it early on didn't question whether it made sense. They simply acted with composure and strategic vision. The lesson here is powerful. Rare opportunities don't always come packaged as investments. Sometimes they present themselves as something too simple to be taken seriously. Therefore, observing social media behavior, waiting lists, spontaneous reactions, and sudden decisions is crucial. Rolex this can reveal a lot, and this type of reading prepares the eye for even rarer models, less known to the general public, those that don't go viral, but that make billionaires hunt for pieces around the world. Rolex Sea Dweller Double Red. The silent rarity that billionaires fight over. The Rolex Sea Dweller Double Red. It's the opposite of hype. It doesn't go viral, it doesn't appear on popular lists, and it's almost never on the wrist of someone looking to attract attention. And that's precisely why it has become one of the most coveted models among serious collectors. The two red lines on the dial, simple at first glance, are the hallmark of an experimental era of Rolex back, when the brand was still testing the technical limits for deep diving. Few units, many unique details, and an extremely selective audience. Here's a principle that almost no one understands. The smaller the audience, the higher the quality of the demand. The double red doesn't depend on fads, it depends on knowledge. Those who seek this piece know exactly what they are buying. They know variations, years, fonts, dial wear, and box history. It's the same type of investor who prefers rare assets, illiquid in the short term, but explosive in the long term. It's not haste, it's a cold and silent strategy. This model teaches that true appreciation happens away from the spotlight. While many compete for what's in fashion, few accumulate what is truly scarce. For those who want to apply this reasoning, the exercise is simple. Study benchmarks, understand micro-variations, and talk to experts before acting. And when you put all this together, vision, patience, and market analysis, you realize that these 5 Rolex watches tell a bigger story. A story about how wealth is often built in silence. What are you going to do with this knowledge now? Now the question is straightforward. After understanding how these Rolex watches appreciate faster than gold and stocks, will you continue to focus only on the obvious, or will you start to observe what almost no one else sees? Knowledge only becomes wealth when it moves from theory to practical decision-making. Perhaps it's time to study a model more deeply, follow the secondary market, talk to collectors, or even rethink how you view long-term assets. Reflect calmly. How many opportunities have you seen pass you by because they seemed too simple, too different, or outside the norm? What if, starting today, you began to analyze everything with more strategy and less haste? The same reasoning that applies to watches applies to business, career, investments, and personal projects. Those who build something solid don't rush. They observe, choose, and sustain the decision over time. If this content opened your mind, imagine what's to come. So do this. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep walking with us in this universe where vision, strategy, and patience build true wealth. And tell me in the comments, which of these Rolex watches would you have the courage to hold for 10 years?